Hello everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar series for 2010. We had a lot of success last year. I want to welcome back everyone who's been attending these on a regular basis, and also welcome any new folks that are joining us for the first time. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us with this Cornell Cooperative Extension's Nutrition Education Program presentation. For folks who are unfamiliar with webinars, just to let you know, we are in broadcast-only mode. So if you need the audio, down at the bottom of the screen is the phone number and the access code for that. And due to the number of participants that we have to keep the lines muted. But we want to make this interactive. So please feel free to ask any questions via the chat function on your control panel. And I'll just go to the next slide here. So if you take a look here at this slide, you can see where I'm pointing with my mouse where the first arrow is. If you expand that question and answer box, a text box will open up. You can enter any questions that you want anytime that you want to. For any technical questions, I'll just type right back to you and give you the answers. For any content or presentation related questions, we'll be taking two breaks. We'll take a break in the middle of the presentation and then, and then another break at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. If you have a question about a specific page, if you could please note the page number in your question, and then that way we can scroll back to that slide and as a reference point. Now when we have about 100 people on the line right now. So, and also, when the webinar ends, there'll be a short survey. If you could please take the time to fill that out for us. If you would like a certificate of participation, please just check off yes, and then we will email one to you. If people are sharing a computer to view the webinar, please list all the people who are requesting a certificate, and they'll all be sent as attachments to you in one email. So let me just get over here, and I'm going to change over to Dr. Dolahite. And also, I'm sorry, if you want to minimize the control panel, this little button here with the two arrows, two triangles pointing to the right, that will close your control panel. And then if you want to expand it again, they'll be pointing to the left, and then that'll just expand the control panel again so you can have access to the chat function. So I'm going to, I'll move us over to the next slide here. I'm sorry, I'll move us over to making Jamie Dolahite the presenter. And while she takes over to show us her screen, just a little bit about Dr. Jamie Dolahite. She's the Associate Professor of Community Nutrition in the Division of Nutritional Sciences at Cornell University. And I just want to thank her very much. She has graciously donated her time today. I want to thank her for presenting today on this very important topic. So Jamie, I turn it over to you now. Jamie?
Oops, sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, that's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, okay. I just want to thank Tony and the Office of Mental Health for the opportunity to speak with you today and to tell you about Cornell Cooperative Extension's Nutrition Education Program. Excuse me, I've entitled this presentation, Eating Well on a Budget, because the presentation will focus on programs for limited resource residents of New York State. The mission of our programs are to promote positive nutrition practices, encouraging wise use of personal and environmental resources, securing access to nutritious and safe food, and fostering food-secure communities through research and issue-based programming with a focus on low-income individuals and families. Now, my presentation today is going to be mainly about our programs, but you will hear me throwing a little bit in about research because we are a part of Cornell And the programs I'm going to be talking about are actually a part of land-grant universities across the United States. And so the work that we do is always connected to research and research-based. The umbrella term for our organization is Food and Nutrition Education in Communities, or FNEC. This is the overarching name, and so you'll see the name there as well as our little logo on the side. Our programs are community-based educational programs. They are targeted to limited resource populations across New York State. We're found currently in 54 of the 57 counties, plus all of the boroughs of New York City. And you can see 3 counties there in which we unfortunately do not have programs: Putnam, Hamilton, and Orleans. The 2 programs that I am focusing on today and that are really the primary and major part of our work are Eat Smart New York and FNEC. Eat Smart New York is the state name for what is nationally known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program-Education, or SNAP-Ed. And just in case you haven't caught up, because this is very new, SNAP is what was normally known as, formerly known as Food Stamp Nutrition. And so our program was formerly known as Food Stamp Nutrition Education. But in New York, we call it Eat Smart New York. Now with FNEC, we haven't gotten quite as creative, and I think sometimes maybe we should. But this is a much older program. FNEC's been around for over 40 years this year. This is actually, I guess, the 41st year that FNEC has been around. And we always wonder what it's expanded beyond. But I think, as you'll see in a minute, we do a bit more than food and nutrition education. But food and nutrition education is the entry into working with people and helping them out. The overall objective of our programs is to enable families and youth with limited resources to improve their diet, health, and well-being. And so if you look at the very tail end of that objective, we really are about the well-being of the families and youth that we work with. This is a little different from some other programs. Certainly we're focused on food and nutrition, and as I said, that's the entree or the doorway into families' lives. We're not caseworkers, although I will tell you in the very early days of FNEC 40 years ago, our staff functioned more like caseworkers because that was before that particular expertise was around. But what we try to do is connect with other agencies, such as OMH, to work with clients in a variety of ways. But we do it through diet and health, and then look for others to collaborate with us to help our participants. Our program, whoops, goodness, I really did that, so hang on with me. I apologize. My finger hit the slide here. There we go. I'm sorry. Our programs are supported by the government. We get funding from USDA, so federal dollars go into the support of our programs, state dollars also, and in both instances, county dollars as well. They are delivered in New York State by Cornell Cooperative Extension Association, and I will digress a moment here to say that Eat Smart New York is also delivered by the Department of Health. They have a program called Just Say Yes, and there's another program through Food Change in New York City that is a part of Eat Smart New York. But the largest part of Eat Smart New York does come through Cooperative Extension Associations at the county level. FNEC is delivered only through Cooperative Extension. We utilize neighborhood and community resources. We do that partly to recruit participants. We work with various collaborators in the community to do that. We also deliver lessons out in the community, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But in addition, we take referrals from other community agencies and give referrals to them. The targeted audience is very similar for these two programs, but it is slightly different. Eat Smart New York is really focused on families who are either on SNAP or food stamps or who are eligible for SNAP. And that would be 130% of the federal poverty level. FNEC, on the other hand, has a little higher level of income allowable, but in addition, we focus on families with children. So in terms of Eat Smart New York, we're looking for about 2/3 of our participants to be families. They don't have to have children. And the other third can be on individuals and so forth. But in FNEC, we really focus on families with children. Our programs are series. They are community-based nutrition education series that build on strong community collaboration. Now, I want to focus on series just a moment. Participants who are enrolled in our program are there for at least 6 sessions, and we do use the term graduate, or they don't graduate. So we have certain criteria for them to get a series of nutrition education sessions. And in a minute, I'll talk about the fact that this is really education, not awareness. But what we know from the research literature is that we have to have ongoing contact with people over time. We want people to actually be able to change their behavior, and that doesn't happen with just one contact. And so these series do build on strong community collaborations, as I said just a minute ago, because of referrals, and also just that we work out in the communities and with the agencies in terms of serving groups, pre-existing groups within those agencies. Our programs connect research and practice so that the education is evidence-based. We rely on a fairly large and current literature that tells us how best to educate people and how best to help them actually change their behavior. And it's not easy. Anyone who's on this call, I think if you think about trying to change your own food behavior, it is really quite challenging. We're pretty successful. That doesn't mean we're successful with everyone. But I think we're as successful as we are partly because we base it on our practice on research. We focus on skill building with the goal of changing behavior. So this is not just knowledge. This is really about the skills that are necessary to choose healthier food than has been chosen in the past. Our programs are flexible and they're responsive to the needs of learners. They build on the strengths of families and youth. And I'll come back to that in a minute because it is so important to meet families and individuals where they are and to adjust our programs based on the needs of those particular individuals, and also because most of our participants are adults, to actually base it on their wants as well. Because this isn't these programs are by and large voluntary, and we want people to be able to enjoy being there and to get things that they think they need as well as things that a professional might think that they need. So what is it that we really do? I thought I would organize this by telling you a little bit about our staff, who are the most important thing in terms of how we go about delivering our education. I'll tell you about where, when, and how the education is delivered. I'll tell you what it is that we teach. And then finally, I want to talk to you about how well our programs work. Do they work at all? Our educators, our frontline educators, are diverse in life experiences and ethnicity. They are the key to our success. They're recruited from the communities where they will be working and from the target population with which they will be working. In many cases, our frontline educators have been participants in our programs. And in fact, we, especially in our larger programs, we kind of keep our eyes open for likely candidates among our participants to recruit into open positions. By doing this, our educators have credibility and they have rapport with the audience. And then these frontline educators are supervised by professional nutritionists or family and consumer science professionals. Our staff receive intensive initial training and ongoing professional development. So the initial training orients them to the job. We teach them the basic nutrition. They're not nutritionists. They're more pure educators. We teach them the basic nutrition that they need to know, and we also teach them facilitation and education skills so that they will know how to go about working with the population. Our education can be one-on-one lessons. Upstate, actually about half, maybe slightly less than half of our participants are seen in their homes. And you can imagine that this in very rural areas is because it's difficult to get a group together, number one, and two, because often our participants have transportation issues. And so this picture just shows you an actual lesson in a home with the educator there on the right and the participant on the left working together on a lesson. Our education can also be in groups. Early on in FNEC, we started out by knocking on doors to recruit participants. And then in the 70s, we quit doing that in New York City because of safety issues. And that is today true in our urban areas across the state. But it also is somewhat more efficient to teach groups, and there are some advantages in that the group members can support each other. And so we do these group sessions, sometimes at the Cooperative Extension Office itself, far more often actually in agency sites where the groups are gathering for some other reason. So this is a place where we collaborate strongly with our agency partners. They not only refer individuals to us, but they actually refer groups to us and help us set up the site and the group for an ongoing series. And then occasionally we work at public sites such as public libraries. The educators meet the participants where they are. And that is actually both a literal idea and a figurative idea. So we do focus on where they are in terms of their needs, but also we go to them to the extent that we can. And that was the example of the rural programming. We meet them when it's convenient, taking into account their social and cultural patterns, transportation issues, meeting places where they may be, and work schedules. And so we do see people in the evenings, not so much on the weekends, but during the week in the evenings, and occasionally we also can work things out on weekends. But because we do so much work with agency partners, it's usually during the week. Transportation, beyond home visits, if we're doing something out in the community and we're in an area with public transportation, we'll look for sites where people can get there. In terms of the social and cultural patterns of the audience, I thought I would give you an example there. In New York City, working among some of the Latina audiences, one of the things we often find is small clusters of families from, that are from the same ethnic background. Often they're family members, and we'll do small groups that come together for those reasons, although they may or may not be in an agency where we're working. The education is about changing behavior, not awareness. And so a lot of what happens in nutrition is just about awareness. I'm sure everyone on this call has read nutrition articles in the newspaper, in magazines. You see things on TV, you hear things on the radio. Those are about awareness. It is much, much more difficult to change behavior. And so our programs are really set out to change behavior. And the way we do that is that we use adult learning theory. Our programs are asset-based. In other words, we concentrate on the positive and we ground the work in the life experiences of participants. We know that every participant who comes has strengths that they bring with them. They have knowledge that they bring with them. And it's that's a really wonderful thing to see in a group, because often you'll have experience and knowledge that is complementary. And so in the way that the lessons are done, they're not lectures. They're discussions where people can bring their own knowledge and experience to the table. And we try to make it very safe, so we don't ask questions that are knowledge-based that a response could be wrong, because what we don't want our educators to do is ask a question and then have a participant respond and then say, well, that's not right. I mean, that's way too school-like for our approach. And so the kinds of questions we ask are very open-ended. They're about people's experiences and so forth. And the idea is to get people to participate. So they are learner-centered. They're very active lessons. There will be some information that will be very simple, but that they can read if they choose to. There will be some information that is given verbally, and a lot that is just experienced. And in this photo here, you see that people are up and moving. We do a lot of that in our sessions. We always have an activity break, so people get up, move around, do a variety of things. The behaviors that we focus on, what we want folks to learn, are practical and they are possible to achieve. So we're not trying to reach the moon here, but we are trying to help people actually make changes that will save them money and give them better nutrition at the same time. So we do lots of hands-on things, a lot of food preparation kinds of activities. As you can see in this picture here, folks are preparing food. We do lots of food tasting and so forth. And we use what we call a dialogue-based approach, which is a way of getting people to talk and participate, getting discussion going that is also safe. But we don't call on people, which it's sort of interesting. My husband was recently observing a group that we were doing, and he was observing it because of his own career, and he asked if he could, and we said yes. And we had some of the sort of rules of the road on the board, and one of them was that it's voice by choice. People only speak when they want to. And he said, well, what do you do when people don't want to speak? And so I explained to him how it is that our sessions are set up so that it's really very difficult for someone not to speak when it's all over, because they have opportunities to talk to someone sitting beside them. They get up and walk around, and they're asked to say something to someone else, but never to speak publicly, publicly being in front of the whole group unless they want to. And finally, I would say that our programs are fun. They're fun for me to go out and observe. And one of the things I've seen in attending some graduations across the state is participants saying, this is the best class I've ever taken. I've also gone to this and that and the other, and, in this agency program I'm in, I've had to do A, B, and C. But boy, I'm always happy when I come to the nutrition class because it's fun. And we think that if it's not fun, people are not going to get as much out of it. So even though this is primarily for adults, we do some youth programming. We really do focus a lot on fun. The education includes food-based nutrition education. What I like to tell new staff is that we don't eat nutrients. We eat food. I don't really want them talking to participants and talking to them, telling them about vitamin C I would rather they tell them about how important it is to eat fruits and vegetables that have vitamin C in them, for example. And not to say we never mention nutrients, but we really are talking about food. We're focusing on food for health, the quality of the diet, as well as the safety of the food. We don't do a lot of direct food safety education, although we do some, but we try to have food available to either prepare, taste, some food experience in every session. And we practice food safety, and we ask participants to do that at the same time. And therefore, they sort of learn by example. We point out that that's what we're doing. Another big focus is food resource management. Now, what that means is that we help participants think about the resources that they have to access food. So money, of course, cash, but also their SNAP benefits, their WIC benefits, and in many cases, the food that they can get from food pantries when that's necessary. So how to balance all of that and out of it get a healthy diet. We focus on preparing food with limited time and money. Years ago when our program started, most of the folks we worked with were stay-at-home moms. That is no longer true, if you can well imagine. All of these moms, and certainly we work with fathers and men also, but they're all working. If they're not, they're looking for a job, or they're in a job corps type program, and so their time is very limited. And so we're not teaching them to cook from scratch things that take all day long. We do teach them a lot about food preparation, and it's always amazing to me how little people today know about that. But we teach them how to do it in a way that saves their time as well as their money. And we do lots of tasting of new foods, new recipes. People love new recipes. We focus on things that are quick and also healthy. The education includes feeding children, and I love this picture on the left there of the mom and the baby. We talk a lot about the importance of role modeling. We know that the most important thing for children learning how to behave, and part of that is learning how to eat, is role modeling. And so we don't want parents doing ultimately what I remember one parent saying was, you know, I don't let them have soda, but they always want mine. And, you know, unfortunately, if we're always drinking soda in front of our children, then they're going to learn that that's an appropriate thing to do as well. We talk about family meals and the importance of family meals, and as many of you probably know, that really even reaches over into keeping children away from drugs and alcohol and so forth when families are spending more time together around the table. There's pretty interesting research about that. So we work with parents in some of our groups on the particular parenting skills that are useful in helping children know how, learn how, grow up eating healthily. And we also include moving for health. And here you see a group having fun with a balloon relay. And so we talk a lot about exercise, but we don't usually call it exercise. We call it moving, and we call it activity breaks. When we're talking about kids, we call it active play, because we're not talking about going to the gym. We're not talking about running. We're talking about getting off the couch and moving, and the importance of that, walking and that sort of thing. So we often have these active play breaks in our sessions that allow participants to learn new ways that they can play with their children in an active way.
Jamie?
Yes, Tony?
Why don't we take a break here for some questions?
Okay.
I think this is a good spot. Okay, so the first question has to do with food safety. Should I be concerned about serving outdated foods such as cereal, canned vegetables, etc.? Do these outdated products lose their nutrient values?
So what were the specifics that were given? Canned vegetables and
Cereal.
Okay, so let me not forget about the losing of nutrient value because that's an important piece. But in terms of cereals, I think it's not a particular problem. By and large, it depends, of course, always on how outdated. As long as they're sealed, then they should be good for quite a while. The issue is that they become stale after a while because those packages are not really completely sealed off from, air. Canned goods, as long as the can is completely sealed and, there's no leakage or anything like that, they're also good for a while. I will tell you, though, I had a can of tomato soup that I had brought to the office for a backup, and I opened it one day, and I guess it had been here for a long time, and when I opened it, it didn't look very good. I doubt that it would have hurt me, but they're not very appealing, and so I think that's often what happens with those things that are well sealed. Now, anytime, a can is leaking or anything like that, then it definitely needs to be thrown away. In terms of loss of nutrient value, the place that probably happens most often would be with fresh fruits and vegetables. And that may surprise you, but I would say that rather than buying tired, limp, old fruits and vegetables, it's really better to buy canned or frozen fruits and vegetables. Now, if you can get something that's nice and fresh, particularly from a farmer's market, that's great. But when they sit around for a while, open to the air, then they really do begin to lose some of their nutrients. And so people often think they have to have fresh fruits and vegetables. That's not really true. The processed ones, while they may not be quite as good as something that's fresh at the peak of its freshness, they are, in fact, harvested at the peak of their freshness and preserved, and so they can be really good sources of nutrients.
Yeah, I assume that many people are involved with food pantries, food banks, and when I used to do that kind of work, we would have many things that were outdated.
Right.
The only cautions that we were given that I remember were if a can is dented, where the seal is, that it needs to be tossed.
Right.
So, now I'm going to group several questions together. People are very excited. I'm very excited about what you're talking about and getting involved and getting some educators out. So are you going to be talking about that at some point? How to get some of this information to programs and people in the programs?
We certainly can do that. I would kind of like to hold that question to the end if we could.
All righty. I
have a slide at the very end that has contact information on it, and we can talk about that a little more then.
Okay, great. Are nutrition education sessions geared for developmentally disabled individuals?
That's a really excellent question, and I'm so glad that it was asked. Yes and no. The yes is, of course, we work with many developmentally challenged individuals. However, we want to work with folks who are, number one, capable of learning what we're trying to teach, and number two, who have responsibility for purchasing and preparing their own food. So that's really what we're about, is helping people choose and prepare food. And so working with, for example, with folks who are in an environment where someone else is doing all of the planning, food procurement, food preparation for them, and all they're doing is eating. We do not want our staff to be working with those folks. Not to say that, not to put them down in any way, but that's not what our programs are about.
Okay. How much does it cost for these services?
They don't cost anything. And I always hesitate to say that because, in fact, they cost all of us quite a lot because the government pays for them. And I am going to show you some cost-benefit data in a minute, but it costs us around $1,000 to $2,000 per participant to have them go through these educational series. But that is all paid for by Uncle Sam at the federal, state, and local level, county level.
And on slide number 6, we talk about certain percentages of the poverty level.
Yes.
For the eligibility. Do you
yes.
have a person is asking? Do you have the actual figures, income limits?
No, because it depends on the size of the family.
Yeah.
So for a family of 4, the federal poverty level is, I can't remember exactly, but it's in the 20,000, I want to say like between 22 and 24,000 for a family of 4, but that's the poverty level. And so then for Eat Smart New York, it would be 30% above that, and it would be almost twice that for FNEC.
Okay.
I will also say that Eat Smart New York, and this is not, this isn't a state requirement, this is a federal requirement. Eat Smart New York works with a means-tested population. FNEC does not. And so, I mean, we know if someone's on WIC or SNAP, food stamps, that they're eligible. We also know that if they're living in a certain area, they're likely to be eligible if they're on, a number of benefits. But we also work with a number of participants who may not even be citizens and so therefore may not be eligible. So we're pretty broad in what we can do through these programs. It depends on the funding source and so forth, how far we can go. The other thing that I would throw in here, just as a balance for what I just said, we are not food assistance programs. Now, of course, food stamps or SNAP is a food assistance program, and Eat Smart New York is the education arm of that. But in FNEC, we don't give any food other than the bites of food people have in an educational session. And so what we really believe and what we see is that we're about helping people get themselves on their feet with the resources that they have available.
Cool. Another question is, are you working with people with mental illnesses?
Yes, in some cases we are. I think it's a lot of those decisions are made at the local level with agency partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I probably should have framed this a little earlier in the webinar, but as most people know, the folks with mental health problems, there's been a major study came out a couple years ago from NASHBID that shows that our population dies 20 to 25 years sooner than the general population. And that is due mostly to preventable causes. Although suicide is part of that, it does not account for the majority of it. So a lot of that has to do with smoking, cardiometabolic syndrome, high cholesterol,
right.
Diabetes, that kind of stuff. And certainly nutrition is one of the things that we've focused on here at the Office of Mental Health. So this is one of the reasons why this kind of stuff is so important. While we were researching that for that initiative, we came across Cornell Cooperative Extension's programs, and that's how we ended up here today with your presentation. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that in the beginning.
Well, and I will also add here, being an old clinical dietitian in a former life, I know that many of the psychogenic medications, psychotropic medications, excuse me, are cause people to gain weight. They increase their appetite, cause them to gain weight. Mm-hmm. Now, our cooperative extension programs are not, we do not practice medical nutrition therapy. That takes a registered dietitian. But what I will tell you is that we have many examples of participants who, by changing their food choice behavior, have actually lost weight. They didn't come to us to come to a weight loss program, but they came to us to learn to eat healthier, and they lost weight. And so I think in that case where you have folks, and folks who may not have access to a dietitian, for example, who are struggling with their weight for any reason, but often because of the medication they're on, that this might be a really good place for them to find some help. I will tell you, the educator, the frontline educator, will not be informed about medications. That's not that right. person's role. Right. But nevertheless, I think it could be a good help.
Thank you. What federal, state, and local efforts are being made to possibly ban unnutritious foods?
Oh my, that's a whole, should we do another webinar maybe, Tony? They're really, to ban them, I don't think there are any efforts like that. There certainly is, I think in Governor Patterson's, some of what he's proposing right now, there's a soda tax. So the idea is sort of like with cigarettes, rather than banning, it's to go about making them less affordable. This is going to be a really difficult proposition for our policymakers over the next few years. We in this country like to be able to make our own choices. We don't want things, you know, broadly, our population doesn't want things shoved down their throats. And unfortunately, we're in a period of time now in which obesity is rampant and many of our food choices are really unhealthy. I do not see those being banned. I don't know how far we're going to get on taxing some of them. I think that that is a really interesting idea. I think we just have to wait and see. More importantly, I think each person, each individual has to begin to look at the environments in which they live and think about how to make those better so that healthy choices are easier to come by. An example of that would be not having soda machines in schools, for example. Mm-hmm. If we change our environment, then it isn't to say that we can't choose unhealthy foods, but it makes our healthy choices easier.
Sure. Who teaches these classes if not a registered dietitian?
These are sort of peer educators. I always stumble over saying it that way because, in fact, in the public health arena, there is a peer educator model, which is not an employee, and all of our folks are employees. They're highly trained, but they come to us with a minimum of a high school education. We really look for people that know the community. We look for people that have, if possible, that have graduated from our program and that know our participants' lives because of their own life experiences. Folks that have been on food stamps or SNAP benefits themselves, who have been on WIC, and understand some of the issues that surround that. And then we teach them the nutrition that they need to know, and we teach them the group facilitation skills and so forth. They are all then supervised by a nutritionist, usually by a nutritionist who is, in many cases, a registered dietitian, but certainly has a master's degree in nutrition.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's all the questions for right now. I'm going to encourage people to continue. Those are some great questions, and to continue sending in your questions, and then we'll continue with your presentation here. I'll turn it back over to you. Jen.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the questions. I really appreciate those from all of you. Okay, so I want to turn now, that was a good place to take a break. I want to turn now to talking about the connection between our programs and research and evaluation. So I said earlier that our programs are evidence-based, and that is true. We learn from research. We learn from research that lots of people across the country do, and sometimes even in other countries. We also learn from research that we do right here at Cornell. My own faculty appointment is partially in extension programming and partially in research, and so my work focuses on our programs and how to make them better. FNEC, or Food Nutrition Education in Communities, applied research is practice-based. And so the work that I do really is informed, the research is informed by the practice. Most of the research questions that we ask here, most of the work that we do, comes out of things that we've seen in the program. So we focus on issues that are relevant to the program. In terms of evaluation, we look at the program outputs as well as the outcomes. Now, what does that mean? The outputs is the number of people we see, our caseload, for example. The outcomes are the changes that participants report. And so we look at those, we evaluate them with every participant, actually. We review those data regularly, so we're always keeping an eye on how things are going and what might need to be tweaked, what research questions are there. And I will tell you about one of those in just a minute. We also are continually testing new strategies and methods. Right now we have a research project going, it's been going for several years, in which we've developed a new intervention that integrates parenting skills with nutrition and food skills and teaches parents how to, I think I mentioned this a while ago, how to work with their children to get them in a very positive way to choose the best foods. And we're kind of in the middle of that project right now. We've got some early data that look really quite good, and that'll be a new model that I think we'll be using in the near future. And then another line of research is understanding of staff and participant concerns. So we're in very close touch with our staff across the state. We have about 300 educators, and we work with them, and they inform what it is that we do. So as we develop a new program, we get staff input, then we go out, we try it with participants, we interview participants and see how it went. So there's this continual cycle. Our programs are continually evaluated and modified as needed. And this shows you the cycle. If you see the research up there on the left of your screen, you see that there's a back and forth arrow. That indicates that research informs what goes on in program, and program also informs the research that we do. And so if you start with the green box, which is planning, we plan our programs, then we go through a process of program development, we implement them in the communities, and then we assess them, evaluate them, and go back to the planning board to adjust them. So this is a continual process that we're going through where research, which is different from evaluation, because research is really new information that we learn. Evaluation is how well we're doing. Sometimes there's kind of a fuzzy line between the two. But this just shows you the cyclical process that's a part of life for us. Some of our initiatives over the past few years I thought might be of interest to you. And so this first one is the one I said I'd get back to that we saw through our evaluation data. A number of years ago, we saw that participants who were educated one-on-one in their homes had much better outcomes than those who received small group education. Now you might say, well, of course, because they're getting individual attention. But I looked at those and I thought, well, all right, so what is it we're going to do? Are we going to go back to teaching everyone one-on-one? Well, no, that's not safe. The safety issue is probably the biggest issue with that, for safety for our staff. So what is it we should do? So we developed a project where we looked at it from a number of different ways. We looked at the literature, we went out and observed groups, we read, we talked to a consultant, and we developed a new process of training our staff, because it turned out that our staff knew nutrition, but they didn't know very well. They weren't really competent at small group facilitation. And once we instituted that new intensive training across the state, what we find is that the outcomes are the same now, whether participants are taught one-on-one in their homes or in small groups. We do outcome evaluation of, or we have done outcome evaluation of this newly developed training, and as I said, we see now that there's no difference between one-on-one and small group education. We looked a few years ago at the cost effectiveness of FNEC, and this was particularly based on FNEC, although in New York State, Eat Smart New York is delivered in extension in the same way as FNEC, so I think the data would be quite similar. And we found, actually I have the data here in just a minute that I can show you. We looked at how effective it was. We also looked at the cost effectiveness on one-on-one versus group delivery. Now, I didn't put the data in for that one, so I'll just tell you that even before we instituted this new education of our educators, training of our educators, what we found was that the one-on-one delivery was so much better that, in fact, it was as cost-effective as group delivery. So driving to someone's home, seeing them one person at a time was just as cost-effective as group delivery, which was kind of a surprise to us, but that was true. Right now, we've got some work going in terms of dose response. Usually when you talk about dose, you talk about medication, but in nutrition education, we also use that term because we want to know what is the optimal number of sessions. 6 is minimum. We like to see our educators do around 10 because our evaluation data indicates that we get the best response there, but we don't have really good research data to support that, and we're working on that right now. And also the timing of education. And what I mean by that is that these sessions are delivered usually on a weekly basis, sometimes on a bi-weekly basis. We really don't want them any closer than that because we want participants to have time to go home and try out the new skills that they're learning. And we find if you stretch it out too long, then people, they don't retain what you're learning and you don't have time to reinforce it and so forth. We've also done a randomized control trial of FNEC in New York City and found that, in fact, the program is very effective. And a randomized control trial is sort of the gold standard for research. So does it work? Well, this slide shows you the improvements that participants report. So this is evaluation data. This isn't really research data. And you can see that 88% of the participants report improvement in their nutrition practices. Now, did we say, did you improve your nutrition practices? No. We have an evaluation instrument. You might call it a test, although we never really use that term because it's not a test in that you pass or fail. But we do collect those data before participants begin and then again at the end and find out what they tell us they're doing. And so we see that 88% of our participants report at least some improvement in nutrition practices, 80% in food resource management, 65% in food safety practices, and a little over 40% in physical activity. In other words, how active they are, how frequently and how long they walk or do other physically active behaviors. What are the societal benefits? This comes out of two cost-benefit studies, cost-effectiveness studies. One was from Tennessee, and it looked at the savings in food costs over 5 years, and it found that participants saved $2.50 for every dollar that was spent on the program. So that's a pretty good return on our tax dollars. In terms of health costs, and this study was done here at Cornell. I led it and had a health economist that worked with me on it, and we looked at savings in health care plus productivity. And we found around $10 saved by the participants and society for every dollar that was spent on the program. So this is really, really wonderful. And it's in the same range as many, it's actually higher than many medications and medical procedures. So what do participants say? Do they tell us that the program is successful? I thought what I would do here is just read a few comments to you. I have a bunch of these, but I picked out a handful to share with you. One participant said, "Before I took this class, my family ate fast food at least 5 or 6 nights a week. Lately, I've started to cook for the kids, and they love eating the foods I make. They prefer eating at home to going out, and it's cheaper too." Another one said, "I never realized the importance of breastfeeding for mothers. I need to continue coming to these sessions to learn all I can to be successful at it." Another said, by planning ahead of time, by making a list and clipping coupons, I saved $80 on my last food shopping trip. And finally, as a result of the nutrition program, I've started reading the food labels. I've started preparing weekly meal plans, which include more fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm comparing prices and making food lists. So that just gives you a few of the positive comments that, that participants have made. And I will also say here, the question arose a while ago that you put forth, Tony, about who the educators were, if not dietitians. And what I will tell you is that the participants absolutely adore the educators. One of my favorite stories when I was early in the program, I was on Long Island, and I had gone to a class with an educator, and I was sitting there chatting with a young woman after the class. It was in a halfway house. And I said to her, "So what are you going to do when you get out of here?" And she looked at me, and she had this big smile on her face, and she pointed to the educator who was across the room, and she said, "I'm going to be just like her." And she really did have a plan to go about trying to get a job and learn to do the kind of thing that the educator had done. So they're wonderful role models and really the keys to our success. So looking to the future, what are the challenges that we have? Where are we going? Cultural changes just seem to be galloping along. We have in New York State and some other states as well, we have increasing diversity among our participants, but we also have decreased time. And so, and this seems to become more and more true. Electronic communication is also something that's galloping along here. And we're still unclear about how best to connect with our participants in this way. We do know, for example, that most of our participants have cell phones. And so one of the things that I'm going to be talking with a colleague about who works in education here at Cornell is a way of sending nutrition messages as text messages on cell phones. Now, we wouldn't replace what we're doing now with that, but it might be a supplement. Those are new things for us to consider. This multiculturalism is an ongoing challenge. We do hire staff from the communities, but, you know, we've been in groups in New York City where a group of 12 where there were 8 languages being spoken. There's no way to have an educator who speaks the, you know, all 8 languages there every time and so forth. So this is a continual challenge. The increasing income and health inequities in our country are really something that we think we have some of the answers for, but we have to be out there and we have to continually look for better ways to do our work. Right now, we have increasing numbers of eligible people with varying educational and experiential backgrounds. We have many highly educated people, as you well know, who are without a job and easily qualify for our programs. And so in some ways, this makes it more difficult because our groups become more heterogeneous. And finally, this increasing prevalence of obesity and diabetes and the other, heart disease and so forth. Frankly, I think if nothing else breaks the back of the healthcare system in this country and the bank, it's going to be diabetes if we don't get obesity under control. So I don't think we're going away. I don't think we're going to do ourselves out of a job. Unfortunately, I think that there will be, certainly as long as I'm alive, there will be people who need our services, and I hope that we'll be able to be around to work with them. I ask whatever other questions you have here, and I will point out on this slide, and hopefully you have the handout, 2 websites. The first one, www.fnec.cornell.edu, is for our unit here at Cornell, and that just will tell you some things about our programs. You can also go, and I should have put this on here and I didn't, I apologize. You can go to the OTDA website, the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance at New York State, and find out more about Eat Smart New York per se. In terms of connecting locally with people that can provide programs for for the folks that you work with or for you yourself, then the thing to do is to go to www.cce.cornell.edu, and you will find a tab there for local programs. You'll find a map of New York State, and if you just move your cursor around, you can find your county, and when you click on it, you'll find the CCE office in the county seat. And if you call there, then they can give you information and work with you. If there are folks on this call that don't understand how to do that, or for some reason aren't able to, then I would suggest you call the telephone number here, which is our main office number, and we can refer you out to the local associations. So it's been a real pleasure to be here. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Okay. One of the things that we can do is I'll be sending out some follow-up material, because I guess some folks did not get the PDF of the presentation that I had sent out yesterday. So when I send that out, I can also send out the ODTA link. Is that
great? Yeah.
Okay, so I can send that out as well.
Okay.
And then I'm just gonna pull this back over to my screen. And then while you were talking there, just to help folks get a visual of this.
That's great.
I'll pull this up. This is the link for the local areas, and then and I know that there's a time lag, so I'll try not to do this too jumpy, but if you put your mouse over your cursor over a particular county, and then click on it, it should come up with. I'm just gonna have to.
There's St. Lawrence County there.
So this is St. Lawrence, and then it's got the contacts for St. Lawrence County. So you obviously can do that with any county. So I think that's going to answer many questions, because there were several people from all over the state who were looking for where to contact in their area. So I think that'll take care of many questions. One question specifically around that, though, is are there any restrictions? I know that surprisingly, the one-on-ones were more cost-effective and worked better than the groups, but for like state-operated community residences, are there any restrictions towards going on to institutional settings like that?
No.
Okay.
As long as participants have responsibility for food procurement
Yep.
and food preparation, that's the standard.
Okay. Yeah, that would actually be ideal in a community residence. We would certainly encourage that because that's where our folks should be learning how to do that when they move out. The plan would always be for people to transition out and into their own place. So that would.
I think that's absolutely ideal. And another place that we do work, and I'm always a little hesitant about this, but because it depends on the time frame for folks, but we do work in chemical dependency programs. But what we want staff to do is work with folks who are in halfway houses or who are just ready to leave, to go out and be responsible. Because otherwise, it's not the best use of staff time and resources.
Sure. Do you teach people to read labels carefully?
Absolutely. That's one of the main things we do. So I actually didn't say this, and I intended to. I get to talking and forget some of the details. But the kinds of things we focus on, we do focus on label reading. We focus on portion sizes. We focus on things like if you are going to eat out, how do you pick the best things in a fast food restaurant, for example, as well. I think I did mention quick, easy recipes. Making grocery lists, appropriate shopping, those kinds of things.
One person asked, I'd be interested in how you teach group facilitation skills to the peer educators. This, it may be too specific for this discussion, but can you answer that?
Well, I can give just a little hint, and then if that person would like to call me and talk more about it, I can be reached through the number on that slide that you have up right there. We have a 19-day training that our staff, our newly hired staff, go through, and we teach them a variety of practices, such as using open-ended questions, such as making people feel safe by not calling on them, and yet setting the situation up so that they do share. They may, as I said earlier, just share with a neighbor. There are some pretty specific practices that we teach and that we use. And we also have a template that we use for the way that a lesson is to be designed, which helps with that. That helps guide them when they're actually in front of the class. So that's just a little bit, but a lot of it is also hands-on stuff. And we work very hard to not come across as the experts, but rather to facilitate the discussion, recognizing that participants come with a lot of knowledge themselves. Not all of it. We're there. We have knowledge to share as well, but we do that in a very particular way.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent approach. It's comparable to what we call shared decision making here at the Office of Mental Health, and it's certainly something that we promote. I think that's excellent.
It's not unlike motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
At the group level.
There was some questions about the groups versus one-on-one. So in slide 19, and I actually have control of the screen here, so let me just back up. And my slides are going to be a little different because I had added a couple slides, but I believe that this one had to do with the groups versus, would not be that one, is it? Maybe it does that one. Had to do with the groups. Usually people want to do better when they have group pressure.
Right.
So the evidence that you all have, it contradicts that. Is there a...
I think that what we had I think there actually are some advantages to groups because people support each other. But I think what we had before was that we had staff who didn't have these facilitation skills and were coming across as the experts and doing more of a lecture model. Mm-hmm. And so now they're really equivalent. And, you know, we have to keep working on that. It's not a one-time deal. But I think they're really equivalent. Part of what I wanted, part of the case I wanted to make, though, in addition to the fact that we've gotten group outcomes up to be as good as one-on-one, is that in fact, for a long time, the powers that be have encouraged state programs to go to more groups because they thought that it was more cost-effective. Because you only traveled once to get to, 5 or 10 or 12 people, and, so forth. You had them together. You only spent an hour to an hour and a half with them instead of doing that 10 or 12 times, when in fact we found that if you look at cost effectiveness, that's not really true. And so to me, what that does is it supports meeting people where they are. If they need to be met one-on-one, that's what we should do. If they need to be met in groups, that's what we should do.
Well, it sounds like a lot of your success is based on engagement with folks. And it's probably a little harder to engage folks in a group setting as opposed to giving that individual attention. So people are probably more successful when they are getting that individual attention.
Yes, and I had a staff member whose background was actually education, who helped build this training program that we have, and she used to correct me. Instead of saying one-on-one education or group education, she would say, Jamie, it's not individual versus group. It's individual or individuals in a group. Right. And I think we've moved now to working with individuals in a group rather than working with a group.
Right. On slide 23, this person is, let's see. Okay. Do you have references for the studies on this page?
I certainly do. Okay. What would be the best way to give you those? Because I can tell you the second one, because that's my study, was in the May-June issue 1998 of the Journal of Nutrition, Education, and Behavior. Journal of Nutrition, Education, and Behavior, May-June issue 1998. The other study is in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association. It's a few years older, and I would have to look it up. I don't have it right now, but should I send those to you, Tony?
Yeah, you can send those to me, and also there will be a follow-up email sent to everyone who participated today that will be generated automatically by the GoToWebinar software. That will have my email address on it, and if you have any questions or any further things that you would like more information on, just shoot me an email, and I will follow up with Janie or whomever I need to get you the information. That's one of the nice things about this. Although we do have to sacrifice some interactivity as we do the presentations, the nice thing about it is there's still a lot of connectedness afterwards, and we can still do a lot of one-on-one coaching and responding to any requests one-on-one. So.
Okay, and but please feel free to call the telephone number 607-255-7715 for referrals to the local sites, but they can also get a message to me if there's a specific question.
Okay. With Michelle Obama's new thrust on reducing obesity, is there increased career opportunities in this field of nutrition? And also, I believe Michelle Patterson also has a thrust on reducing obesity as well.
Yes. Michelle Patterson is particularly interested in middle school children with her walk to Albany and so forth. She's been on campus talking with us about various programs. Well, yes and no, I suppose. To be a registered dietitian, there are, I think the limitation there is in slots to have people go through dietetic internships. We certainly need more folks, but we also need more slots to educate folks. So that's a bit of an issue at the moment. Nutrition programs across the United States are burgeoning. Ours at Cornell has grown exponentially in the last few years. So I'm talking about college programs now. To work in this area as a frontline educator, these programs are across the United States, and it's just a matter of openings. Our funding is unfortunately extremely limited for these programs. The FNEC program has gotten some federal increases the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, but very small ones, and for about 20 years before that, it was flat dollars, which of course meant buying power was going down and down and down. So there's lots of need, and we don't have a lot of openings. So I'm not sure exactly whether the question was about professional education or frontline staff, but in either case, there are some limitations in opportunities for people to do that, although the need is really huge.
Now, did I hear you say that there are programs like this in all the states?
Yes.
Okay, because that is a question in regards to Massachusetts. And we do have people from different parts of the country on the line. So where would people go to find, without getting too specific, but where could people go to find these types of programs in their state?
Well, the best thing to do would be to go to their land-grant university. So in Massachusetts, it would be the UMass, University of Massachusetts. And if you can get on the website, go to Cooperative Extension, and look. I would first look for FNEC, and the reason I would do that is that is a very standard name. The name for SNAP-Ed, I mean, there are a variety of names. As you can see, I gave you 3 today, and 4 if you count our local name on campus. But FNEP is FNEP is FNEP, and if you can find the person in the state who is the coordinator or director of that program, then they can work with you from there. Again, I'm happy to provide references to that. I can give you my email, Tony, also, so you can send that out with this other stuff if people would like to have it.
All righty. Let's jot that down. I am a dietitian and am developing a cooking skills program to promote independent living skills for mental health clients in residential and supported housing programs. Would I be able to observe a class?
Absolutely. We'd love to have you do that.
Okay. And the way to do that would be to contact the local, to go on the website and contact the local cooperative extension?
Sure. Or, if you're in New York State, give me a call and I can provide a, kind of a link.
Okay. Let's see. Looks like we've answered a lot of them. In regards to changing our environment, this is kind of an interesting thing when we were talking about that, because one of the things that we look at is, when folks who are in our care are inpatient, people aren't allowed to smoke. But when they are discharged from the hospital, the environment's changed and people generally tend to go back to smoking. We are not in favor when it comes to nutrition and things. We're not in favor of taking out like the soda pop machines and banning a lot of things, but to offer healthier choices for folks and to help people learn good decision-making skills in regards to like an environment, rather than, because as soon as the environment changes, if the person hasn't learned anything different or really made a decision, when the environment changes and the freedom to buy whatever you want to buy, people will buy what they normally are used to. So we're not in favor of banning things like that, but to teach good decision-making skills and to help with motivational interviewing and help with behavior change and why this is important. With the question that we have here in regards to environment, though, it's a little different. This person is asking about that in their neighborhood they don't have good supermarkets, and they have to travel quite a distance, 45 minutes by bus, to get to a supermarket that has, the healthy, that has the food to support their healthy eating habits, like
Yes.
couscous, fresh spinach, organic meats, and to avoid processed foods like that. Do you have any strategies or any suggestions around that? Is there anything that you all can help with something like that?
That we can help with here? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I mean, just in regards to these programs. Any?
Yeah, well, our programs in many counties, and this is not 100% true, we work with the farmers market nutrition programs, which is one way to get fresh fruits and vegetables out. Folks may know that there's been a lot of work done in the state by the New York State Department of Ag and Markets to make those more accessible to people on food stamps or SNAP benefits, as well as on WIC. This is a major problem, and I think in many ways it's a policy issue. Working with, if folks are able to do this, working with local, what's the word I want, legislators and so forth, trying to make it attractive for grocery stores to come in is a good thing. In some rural areas, there are buying clubs where people can get together and actually purchase fruits and vegetables and so forth and divide them up. But it's not an insignificant barrier to healthy eating. It's really, really a problem. And we know that access is, in fact, related to chronic illness. So I don't have a magic answer to that. I wish that I did. There's quite a bit of research going on about it. We've been describing the problem now for a few years, and slowly some things are starting to happen, but it's not everywhere. And my guess is that the person who asked that question is in a rural area. We talk about food deserts where there's nothing but, a convenience store that has maybe some brown bananas at best. It's a problem. So I think probably the only strategy, personal, individual strategy that I would have to offer is, when the opportunity arises, to go to those stores, go infrequently to save on gas, stock up to the extent possible, buy canned and frozen things, and just the fresh things that can be eaten within a few days. That's probably the best choice. But going to the larger community to try to, make things more accessible would be really important.
Yeah, I like that idea of sort of the buyers, doing that group buying thing.
Yeah.
There are probably other people that are in the same boat and might be willing to do something like that. And I've found too that, and this is very, situational, but I found too, and I live in a rural area, and we have a small grocery store nearby. And but what I have found is if you talk to the manager, they will, and you have specific things that you would like them to order, and you're going to buy them. They are sometimes flexible with that. It depends on what it is and how how fast it's going to go, but they will be flexible with ordering some products if you if you assure them that you're a consumer that's going to buy them. So
it also depends on the kind of store it is. If it's a locally owned store or if it's a franchise, so that it has some local control, then that makes a big difference. if it's a store that is, run by, I don't know, a large conglomerate that's run by a company in another state, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm thinking of sort of Walmart right now, although with the super Walmart, there are lots of things available.
Right.
But, what is stocked in a given Walmart is really decided in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Right.
And so the local managers don't have any real say in that. But in other stores, they do. They absolutely do.
Now, do you? This will be the last question, and then we'll do a little bit of wrap up, and then we'll say goodbye. So will you come into community centers? I mean, how do you promote these programs? Not necessarily doing individual education, but like what we're doing today. Do you go into community centers and let people know that this program exists?
That's very much done at the local level,
Okay.
and it's primarily done with and through agency partners, although there certainly are a variety of campaigns that go on. A lot of it depends on the local culture, whether it's a city, whether, a small town, an urban area. So often what we call one-shot deals are done where an educator will go out, often the supervisor will go out and do a one-time educational experience just to let people know about what it is that we do. So yes, in community centers, but often through our agency partners as well.
Well, Jamie, thank you very much. This has been very helpful. It's been very informative. I actually learned quite a bit.
Great.
And based on the comments, I think that a lot of people, this was new for a lot of folks. And it sounds like the people are very eager to take the next step and follow up with you or with the local cooperative extensions to get some training for the folks that they work with.
Great.
So thank you.
Well, and I will say that the local staff would just be delighted to come out and do a presentation in whatever agencies folks are working in to tell them about what we do and show them a lesson, things like that. So we're really happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me today, Tony. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So, folks, for our next month's webinar, this will be on spirituality and recovery. And I know that we have a number of folks on the phone who are not necessarily Office of Mental Health folks. So in the context of what we're talking about with recovery, we're not speaking about recovery from substance abuse. We are speaking about recovery from a major mental illness. So this webinar will be done by our Deputy Director here at the Office of Consumer Affairs, Joseph Swinford. He is a former minister, and that will be on February 25th from 1 to 2:30, and the registration is there at the bottom. And for those of you who got this message through our listserv, if you know anyone else that would like to join our listserv, please just let me know, send me an email, have them send me an email, and we'll put them on the listserv. That's how we do a lot of these announcements here. You will be getting some follow-up emails from me via the webinar software, and again, if you have any questions or anything like that, love to hear from you, love to have that dialogue. And when we close out today, there will be a brief survey. It's got about 6 questions. One of them is if you want to have a certificate emailed to you, just again, just check that box and we will email that out to you. And if you have several people that attended today and you all registered under one name, just list the names in the other comments section, and we will email all of those out in one email as separate attachments. Thanks again, everyone. We had about, at one point, 110 folks on the line. This has been one of our biggest webinars, and I hope that they keep getting bigger. And next month, we will try something new. We will try to have the audio coming through the speakers. So if you would prefer that, we're going to do both. We'll have the speakers and the phone, and then people can make their choice. So if you would prefer to have speakers, dust them off and get them ready, because we're going to try that next month. Again, take care, And bye-bye, everyone. Thanks again, Jamie.
Thank you, Tony.
Bye-bye.